Okay, so how's it going, everybody? This is my 200 hour of active immersion point. I reached 200 hours a couple days ago. Super hyped to talk about this. So I'm gonna go over several things. Um, Basic little stats that'll be just like a quick little thing, realizations I've made about immersion, also like anything that I want to talk about, like things that I've learned about immersing with using MIA for romance languages, because I know people usually say like, oh, it's much easier since they're romance languages, but there's still differences and there's still things you need to take into consideration. So for anybody that's learning or trying to learn MIA with romance languages, so I'll have some things that I've learned about that as well. So really happy about getting started with this. Let's get right into it. So I've this is my 200 hour mark of active immersion, and if you haven't seen, if this is your first time seeing this, I also have the 100 hour mark when I hit that, and so I'll be doing update video every 100 hours of active immersion. I hit 200 hours 55 days after my 100 hour mark, so it's been about, was that a little under 2 months. So that was a thing. When I first started, my active immersion has drastically increased. So when I first started got to getting to my 100 hours, my minimum that I had to hit was an hour a day for it to be considered that like I've studied, I completed, I did have to do a minimum 1 hour of day every day of active immersion, and I now it's that minimum is still there, like that's still my minimum, but I'm not just barely hitting that and then calling it a day. Like it's like solidified as a habit. I now do a solid 2 to 3 hours usually. If I'm feeling particularly lazy, like an hour and 30, an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm really hype and really happy the fact that I'm now hitting 2 to 3 hours a day of active immersion. That's including active like watching something and listening to something. But I will say that the weekends are still a struggle. So I still struggle on hitting the weekends, and I'll probably have showing you the fact that I do struggle hitting the weekends. I don't know why. Probably because funny, it's weird because I do active immersion at work, and because of that, I'm able to get a lot done. And it's just due to the way it's weird how COVID did, and basically I'm at work and I have like nothing really to do. Um, but I'm still need to get paid, so I still go to work. But the boss is basically was like, look, just do what you got to do. Just make sure you do whatever little stuff you have to do at work, and you'll be okay. I'm like, okay. So I immerse at work. So I'm able to do the weekdays really easily. It's not even a problem doing the weekdays, but the weekends are still kind of tough because now that I go on weekends, I get lazy. I lose my direction. I lose my I'm a very go with the flow kind of guy, so I lose a lot of that. But so that's one thing I'm really trying to get out and get that going. So we'll see about that. Okay, so now I'm going to show you my Anki stats. So we'll get right into that. Okay, so these are my stats in Anki. You can see right here. I have a really high retention rate, and that's just because it's honestly Spanish, and due to my vocabulary with, obviously, English is my native language, and I'm also on C1 level in Esperanto, and Esperanto is based off of Latin, so it has a very high amount of there's a high amount of vocabulary that I'm very familiar with in Spanish, which also comes to one of the problems that I'll mention later. So as you can see, I have a very high retention rate. I actually did flunk a matured card. I'm pretty sure it was completely. It wasn't even a brain fart. Normally if I have a brain fart, I don't even bother. I'll just pass it because it was just like a brain fart. But this one I completely, it was minus válido, which is like handicap. Completely forgot it. It just escaped my mind. So the thing is though, it takes me like little to no time. It takes me around 10 to 15 minutes a day to rep my cards. Super easy, no problems. I could increase the whatever that percentage is. Was it the modifier? I forget what it's called, to like give me like less reps since my retention rate is so high. But honestly, it takes me 10 to 15 minutes a day to do it. I see absolutely no reason why I would do that. If it only takes me 10 to 15 minutes. So even if they're all like false reviews or I'm doing stuff that I already know, it's like less inefficient. But less inefficient. But it doesn't even cut into my immersion. I do that. I can do that anywhere. Knock out my reps. It's painless, stress free. Um, Here where I can my added cards, I really don't really pay attention to most of these stats minus the added. I've really been slacking on the added cards. So the added cards have been interesting. I've been having trouble mining as much. Mainly because I'm I'm getting as I'm getting to the low intermediate stage, which I believe I'm probably there in terms of comprehension. It's tougher finding I+1 sentences because of like the similarity in words. Um, I'll show you an example of that later as well, but it's a combination of I'm knowing more words. So I went through this like for like a month period of it just being I+1 sentences everywhere, and now it's to the point where like I+1 sentences are harder to come by, or I have to be more picky because I'm now seeing like somewhere there'll be like this sentence that's like I+1 really good, really good, but it's really uncommon. So it'll be like uh gauntlet or like a word that like I haven't heard at all to this point. Like I'm not gonna spend all day learning gauntlet or reciprocate or something like that. It's really uncommon. So I kind of stray away from those words. But then there's also like because of the similarity in the vocabulary or the kind of head start I have on vocabulary, a lot of words I'll see it once and I'm like, oh, that's that word. Oh, okay. Oh, that's that word. Oh, that word from English. Or oh, that's that word from Esperanto. Oh, makes sense. So I'll show you that again later. But I've been having trouble. I need to get more and more accepting of I+1 sentences because I definitely see them, but I'm kind of like in my immersion. I get kind of lazy, like, I won't mind that, but I can't miss that anymore because previously I would do that, but it would be I+1 sentences everywhere. Now I can't do that. If I see a good common word, and I see and I don't recognize it, instead of looking at it once and keeping going, I probably should mine it because I'm just running out of like it's going to get more and more difficult for me to mine cards. So I have kind of spikes where I mine a lot depending on like the content, I guess, and then that's probably about it. So I need to get more into that. I need to step up my adding. Honestly, anything else, I really don't pay attention to most of these stats. I'm at 565 cards. When I was making the last video, I'm pretty sure I was somewhere around either 100 to 200 work cards. So to me, I've I've accelerated my rate of adding cards, but now it's starting to slow down pretty hard. It's starting to bite me in the ass a little bit. So yeah, that's my Anki stats. Not really, don't really know what else I can show you. Minus my deck life, minus my consistency. So as you can see, I've been when I didn't have a really efficient setup in the beginning, I was having trouble like getting the motivation to mine, and also I would just not make cards. It was just such a drag. Anki sucked. But once I really got my using Sharex, I found out Sharex. I had a really inefficient way previously. Took me forever to mine using like Audacity and some other random screenshot app that was really clunky and difficult to maneuver or manipulate. Um, Using Sharex alone just like eliminated all of that and it made it so much quicker. So no issues with that. But again, I still struggle on weekends. And you see, I still struggle on weekends. Monday, I believe this. Oh no, it's Wednesday. I was just lazy. I can't really chalk that up to anything other than just sheer laziness. Just didn't feel like. Oh no. Actually, that day I completely forgot. Completely fucking forgot. Just was like, oh yeah, I'll do it later. And then I woke up the next day like, oh my Anki. But anyway, so yeah, that's Anki. Now here's my stats. So again, I have the 200 hours, 55 days, 70 days for it. This is kind of just like a random number because I was just so lazy in the beginning that it's just weird. But also marked. So this is the red is the when I hit the 100 hour mark. Again, these numbers aren't perfect. These aren't 100% exact. Like I have exactly 202 hours. It's probably a little bit more. Or maybe a little bit less because of like the dead time from like if I'm watching an anime or show and the hours go from it goes like 10 seconds of no audio. Well, that's technically not immersion. So these are just rough guides, right? If I do 50 hours more immersion this month than last month, then that just means I've done more immersion. Even though that number might not be exact, it's giving me a general trend of how much immersion I've probably got over, right? So now I have 263 hours of total active immersion and 39 hours of reading. So my reading is really stepped up. Like I said, it's more like my reading is more 60% active immersion, 40% reading. Again, active immersion is anything I'm specifically watching, um, watching in target language, possibly with subs, without subs. It doesn't really matter. And total and passive is just I'm just listening, no visual element at all, just listening. Um, so the thing is, my passive immersion has really taken a hit. I've stepped up my active immersion and my reading really big time. I still, so you see in quarter three, so these are the different quarters. So every 3 months is a quarter. Quarter three, I'm on really good pace. I still have 1 month, so this I still have September, and that will be the end of quarter three. So you can see I'm going to pretty much stomp over quarter two. Um, Active immersion, you can see I did 3 hours of reading and 36 hour in quarter two, and now I'm doing 36 hours of active immersion in quarter three. And again, still have a month left, September. So that's gonna be cool. Yeah, I'm really liking my immersion. So again, so passive immersion is kind of like I did a lot of passive immersion in the beginning. So let me see. Like you can see, I did more and more passive immersion in the beginning, but it just doesn't seem as valuable to me. Like if I have time to passively immerse, then I probably have time to actively immerse. At least in the beginning, obviously, so in this lower intermediate stage, passive immersion seems very counterproductive, or not counterproductive. It doesn't really hurt you, but it doesn't help you. It's not as valuable, right? As active immersion is, and and reading in my case, because I separate them out. Yeah. So if I have time to passive immerse, I have time to active immerse. When I'm driving, I'll have the radio on, the Spanish radio on, and it's like 90% music, 10% commercials. So obviously, I wouldn't count the music as uh, active immersion or passive immersion, but I do count the commercials, but I don't ever time it because it's so like, they'll play music, then they'll have a commercial, then they'll go back to music, then, so it's like I'm not going to just be trying to monitor that. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of useless. But one thing that I've learned, and seen in a video from India, I believe India HTH, she did her review, and she did her what she learned and how she came to realize that she was getting too preoccupied with the numbers. And I think I personally didn't struggle with that as much, but I did see little moments where that was kind of an issue where I'm like, okay, well, this is easier to track, or this is that. Well, I don't want to do this because if I doze off, I won't be able to tell where I where how much active and passive and whatever. So I don't think I struggle with that a lot, but I think that it's important that I keep that into consideration and monitor that and make sure that I don't get too lost in numbers. It's very important if you're tracking your progress to not get too lost into the numbers. Don't worry about the numbers. At the end of the day, just immerse. For me, it's helpful because I struggle with consistency, and it helps for me to know when I've been slacking, when I haven't been. So so I'll be like, oh man, no. So like with the Anki thing, I noticed that because of the graph, I'm not adding as many cards as I should be. And because I see that visually represented in the graph, it helps me to then to steer myself in the proper direction. And I think it's important for um, you to be able to do that as well. But the numbers aren't the end all be all. It's on The numbers don't mean anything because at the end of the day, I haven't got exactly the amount of hours that are represented in here, right? Like there's dips in when I'm listening. I'll listen to like a 30-second action scene when I'm watching a movie in Spanish, and that 30 seconds was an active immersion, right? You weren't listening to Spanish, so and there's times where I get more listening in, like say when I'm listening to the radio in Spanish or something like that, or when I listen to a podcast. I'll listen to a podcast either in Esperanto or in Spanish when I'm going to sleep, and so I'll do that. And oftentimes sometimes I'll track it, but most of the time I don't. And it is what it is. So it's important not to get too lost into the numbers. I think that's very important. So with that being said, but I'm still keeping track because it's really helpful for me. But I'm keeping a close eye on I'm keeping a close eye on what's important, and or like and not getting too lost in the numbers. So yeah. Reading reading is really important. Reading is so much so effective. Now that I've really been getting into reading, because the last day I wasn't getting into reading, or the last update video I did, which is the first one, I didn't really get into reading at all. I was about it's about 90% listening or watching, 10% reading. Now it's 60% watching, 40% reading, and holy crap, reading is so much easier, so much cleaner to sentence mine from. Um, you just like I don't know. And I'm reading a web comic. It's not even like reading a book because books are still too hard. But just reading the web comic has like grown my vocabulary so much. It's crazy. Like I said, so much easier to sentence mine from. You can go at your own pace. Listening is in turn it's improved my listening because I know what these words are. I might have to rewind the first time I hear like, oh whoa whoa, I know that word because I'm now hearing the word instead of reading the word, right? And it's coming at me faster. But reading is amazing, man. So if any of you aren't avid readers, I mean, I highly recommend. Even if you're not an avid reader, like I said, you don't have to read novels, you don't have to read books. Grab a comic, grab some kind of manga, shonen that's translating your language, or do something. Maybe get into graphic novels. Highly recommend you use reading, even if it isn't a novel, even if it isn't just something like just a constant stream of text. Read articles. If you can't stand reading for that long, just read one article a day. I'm telling you, it's gonna work. It's insane how much it's progressed my Spanish. So yeah, reading's awesome, guys. Stay in school. So I have Evernote, and I use Evernote to keep track of my a lot of different things, but immersion as well. So I have a little immersion sheet, and so these are the things that I've watched in terms of series. Um, so I'm on like for example episode 32 out of 60 of Danny Phantom, 20 out of 61, right, of these different shows. And this is comics. So Solo Leveling, I'm at chapter 65. I believe I'm at 66 now, but I'm rereading 65 um, out of 118. So yeah. Dungeon Defender's light novel. Haven't read that yet. I read a little bit of it. It's cool. I can understand it. A surprising amount. I would say a surprising amount of the light novel. So definitely gonna probably get into that at some point, hopefully. But right now, doing my thing. So yeah, just I'm creating this list to keep track of what I watch and what I'm not. It makes it easier, so I don't have to like pull up the anime and then or the show and figure out, oh yeah, what episode was I on this episode? Or was I not on? I can always pull this up and do that. So yeah. Also, the interesting thing about, like I said, like for example, Danny Phantom, I always use this because this is the first thing I started immersing with. When I first started watching Danny Phantom, it would take me like an hour and a half. So you see 32 episodes, like 20 minutes. It's not. It would take me like literally like an hour and a half to watch one episode of Danny Phantom. One, because I rewind a lot. Like it doesn't. I get more excited because I don't try to understand everything, but I try to understand the impactful moments. Like so, if someone just throws out a joke, I'm probably not gonna rewind. But if there's like a really impactful moment in the story or in the plot or something like for me to know, I'll rewind it and as much as I can to kind of understand it. So it would take me, and on top of that, I had a really efficient sentence mining setup. But so it would take me like an hour and a half to watch one episode, 120 minute or 23-minute episode of Danny Phantom. Now I'm watching episode like 4 months later, and it took me about 30 minutes. And I rewinded, parts that I didn't understand, and then I didn't understand 100% of it. Some of the stuff I didn't understand, like I said, it was just throwaway jokes, and I was like, okay, whatever, move on. But I understood like my comprehension. Um if you're not familiar with Matt's like his rough draft of the his levels of comprehension goes from like 1 to 6. One is like I don't understand anything. Two is understand some words. Some words things stick out, but I don't really understand the general thing what's going on. Three is I understand the general plot, but a lot of details are still lacking. Four is I understand the main points, but there's really really small little knickknack things that I don't mean. Five is like understand. Or wait, I'll put it up on the screen so you can see what it is. I think I got something mixed up because it goes from 1 to 6, I believe. I would say now that I watched the episode now, and everything was probably at a 4, no subs, anything. But previously, obviously, it was like lower than that. At least that particular episode I watched. So I don't know if it was just you know that the content of the episode was much easier or something like that. Because I watched a Christmas episode before that. It was like 3 weeks ago, and it was like all rhymey and like a carol kind of talking in carols and stuff like that, and it was that whole thing was like a two or like a one, um, probably a two. It was probably like a two. So yeah, this is my little show. Hopefully this will go. Like I said, this will expand. I'll include more shows as I watch more shows. Also, again, I skip around a lot. I don't watch a lot of stuff. I should. I watch a lot of YouTube, but I should definitely finish some of these stuff. But again, I'm not a completionist. If I finish it, I finish it. If I don't, I don't. It is what it is. So another thing I've been doing, so like I said, I've been really obsessed with reading Solo Leveling, and so with my setup, I started having the Spanish version and the English on the other side. So if I don't understand a particular thing I'm reading in this particular section, I will switch over to the English to get clarification and kind of figure it out. Sometimes the English, like because it's a Spanish translation, like a fan translation, they don't translate it word for word, or they'll just have a completely different thing. Like if it's really difficult to translate, they'll just have the character say something completely different. So that doesn't really work too well in those situations, but those are far and few between. But with this in particular, I also want to highlight that I'm having more difficulty sentence mining because of the fact that there's so many shared vocabulary. So in this case, the sentence was like el equilibrio de este país apenas se mantiene unido por esos cinco dinosaurios. So like equilibrio is pretty easy. Equilibrium. When I was reading this, I was like, oh, equilibrio. Okay, I got that. Apenas. So also you have equilibrio and dinosaurios. Like I shouldn't have. I don't have to mind those because it's like equilibrium and that's dinosaur or something of the nature. Understand the clean. Also apenas or apenas. The stress is different. And apenas or apenao is the Esperanto word which means the exact same thing, but in Spanish it's apenas. So I seen that and I automatically knew, oh, it's that. So I'm running into a lot of situation like this where I just know the word now because it's so similar. So that's another reason why I'm having difficulty. I'm noticing I'm having more difficulties mining for sentences, and I have to be a little bit more. I have to drop my. I can't be as stingy with the sentences I was before. So yeah, that's another thing. So yeah, one thing I'm also really loving about this method compared to MIA, no, compared to what I did with Esperanto, which was a much more traditional route, and then I just ended up speaking a lot, was I'm not translating as much as I was when Esperanto. When Esperanto, I was like translating word for word, and then over time it kind of became sentence to sentence, and then it kind of just was like that for a while. With MIA, like most of when I'm listening, most of the time I'm not translating. It's like it's instant, and it's dope from the beginning. So I'm really loving that due to how much immersion I'm getting, and it's much more enjoyable. It's less tedious. I don't worry about all the like the little nitty gritties. I do watch grammar videos every now and again to kind of like if I'm noticing something in my immersion and I'm like what, and I'll just pull up a grammar video, or like for like certain things like what do you call it? I'm not a grammarian, so or like a linguist, so I have trouble with some of the grammatical concepts. Like I get them, but I don't know all the buzzwords, right? I don't know all the buzzwords for the grammar like a lot of other people do. So I'm also loving how in with MIA the progression is exponential. Like I feel the progression. It's very the progression is definitely exponential growth. Exponential growth. It felt more, it felt kind of like a slog in the beginning, and I can really feel myself like catapulting up and getting much higher as opposed to when I was doing previously with Esperanto. It was pretty much just like a slog all the way through, or it was really difficult in the beginning, got easier, then got really difficult again, and then was just like a really slow grind, and it's somehow it just got easier. But I think with the thing about Esperanto is what I did with that was I started very traditional, and then I kind of found MIA and I started using more MIA concepts to learn my Esperanto. And so I think when Esperanto got really easy, it was then when I was really using a lot of MIA principles and things like that to progress in the language. So I think that was the thing that really helped. Also, grammatically, Spanish has been pretty easy so far. Even the subjunctive, funny enough, the subjunctive isn't hard for me at all because in Esperanto there is a I don't know, I got really southern. There's a very Esperanto basically has like a version of it, like it has like this you mo tense. It's not the same, but it has a very similar grammatical concept as Spanish. So in a lot of situations where you would use a subjunctive in Spanish, you would also use it in Esperanto. But there's also a ton way like it's used way more frequently, and also the subjunctive has tenses, which the grammatical concept in Esperanto doesn't. So yeah, funny enough, the subjunctive has actually been really easy for me, really easy for me. So yeah, I don't know, that's a weird thing that I wasn't expecting because I always hear, oh, the subjunctive always trips up people who are learning, or the subjunctive is really difficult. Like, it's weird. It's definitely weird. But it's not really weird. It didn't feel weird. It was just like anytime I see it used, it makes you would if I were to translate it in Esperanto, I would also put the U tense or the U mood, I guess, what you would say, what you would call it. Um, in you would put the U mood also in that same spot. But in Spanish, it's also used way more frequently, and there are some use cases where it wouldn't make sense in Esperanto. You would definitely not use it there. So I would say it's more broad in Spanish, but the concept is very similar. So yeah, I don't really haven't had a lot of issues with the grammatical side of Spanish. The only difficult part is just kind of getting those concepts kind of second nature, right? Like so like se and like le and like so all the object pronouns or the direct object pronouns and the indirect and that stuff, getting that stuff to be like more second nature with my comprehension is only, but that's only just been a matter of time. It's not necessarily that it's been difficult. It's just keep doing it and it'll soak in. So yeah. So one thing I've noticed I've really been having trouble with is the accents in Esperanto. So like the word I brought up, so like I said, the accents in Esperanto are very consistent when you're using like compound words and like nouns and things like that. The stress stays always on the second to last syllable. It stays very consistent. But with Spanish, the stress point moves around a lot. Um, so my it's been taking a very long it's been taking a very long time to sink in for my brain to like follow the stress because it's just that's it's one of those things where it's been like really difficult. Um, but I'm get it. But it's the second I stop thinking about it is the second I make the mistake again and like pick the wrong and do the wrong stress. So yeah. Okay, so about my like where am I immersing? So like I said, I've been immersing with one thing about the immersion is I've been immersing with a lot of dubs, and that's been causing issues. So I want to start. That's not having. It hasn't been causing issues. It's been really good. I've been really enjoying it. Really been really enjoying my immersion. The only thing is I want to start immersing more in Spanish culture. So I want to start using more native like native Spanish content to like immerse. I've been doing a lot of YouTube videos, but obviously you don't get a sense of the day to day with within YouTube videos. So I want to start doing that. Um, so I'm gonna start just slowly incorporating more and more native Spanish content, native Spanish movies or shows or something like that into my day to day immersion, and it'll be over like a slow progress. But I want to start using a little bit less dub content, which has been the vast majority of what I've been immersing with, and start to use more like actual Spanish content. So that's something I want to do in the future, and I want to move my immersion towards that as well. I think my situation is very interesting because a lot of people that do MIA think like very busy people, they're um they're very like they're either super hardcore or they're like super busy and can barely do anything, right? And I'm like the like in neither of those camps. I'm pretty much like not very hardcore, but at the same time, I have a lot of time. I don't have any wife or kids or anything like that. Like I'm just like I'm a 26-year-old guy, so like I can do you know so I have a lot of free time. I don't have a lot of free discipline. So I think my point of view, what I can bring with MIA through these videos can be just another side of it where it's mine is more of a mentality thing, and I'm got to really work through getting myself consistent and keeping myself updated, keeping myself um finding that's necessarily the most efficient method, but all that's every time, but the method that'll keep me doing this. Because if I do manage to get that, then I can easily, at my current weight now, like the current amount of time, I can easily do 6 hours of immersion and keep up with everything else I got going on in my life. So it's just a matter of, can I build up the discipline, and the aptitude to be able to do that consistently in the long run instead. So right now I'm, trying to slowly build up to, my ideal would be 3 hours probably. Like 3 to 4 hours of immersion a day. If I can do that, I'll be pretty hype about that. But 5 hours is like a dream. Like, oh man, if I could do, I wouldn't want to do more than 5 hours. I think I just wouldn't want to be. I just wouldn't want to do that. More than 5 hours a day would be. Oh, that sounds exhausting. So that's another thing. Um, I think also one interesting thing I think, um that I've kind of realized is that when it comes to pronunciation, I feel like my pronunciation is coming along pretty well. And I think that one thing that trips up a lot of people, and I notice this when I'm helping people learn Esperanto, and also just with people who learn languages that share the same like Latin script, is the screening. I feel like sentence spotting from day one is really important, but I feel like reading from day one kind of messes you up because your brain is constantly basing like, like that's an English A, that's not a Spanish A, right? And it takes a very long time to read get that out. So one thing I think that helped me was that I listened to a lot of Spanish in the beginning, like without reading anything. I didn't read anything. I just listened to a lot of Spanish. Listen, internalize the sounds. I did Pimsleur, not necessarily to learn, but just to get really familiar with like how to make the sounds and getting repeating, right? Work and my mouth used to be sore. Like I used to work on Pimsleur, and my mouth would be sore like every day, just like because you never use, you never you never flex those muscles like that before. So I think getting acquainted with like the sounds and trying to practice your pronunciation before you start reading and start like, I'd had to figure out how words are spelled because I knew words, but I didn't. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how you say that, or that's how that word's spelled. Oh, because I've been hearing this word for like a month or two, for a couple months, and I had no idea, right? So I think that helped me from disassociate the sounds of Spanish, um, with like the Latin script, like so I didn't mess up my pronunciation. But at the end of the day, it's not gonna mess you up too much. If it in the long run, it won't mess you up that much. You'll just have to do a lot more practice on the back end to compensate for all of that. So I think that's gonna be all. I think that's gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna um, pack this up and post it. Um, like I said, I feel like it's been a pretty sloppy video, but I got it. I made it through it. So that's been my 200-hour update, and I'll see you guys on the next one.